Most people don't suddenly wake up one day and decide that fat loss is impossible. There is no dramatic moment where everything breaks. No alarm. No warning sign that says, from now on, your body won't work the same. What happens instead is slow, quiet, almost invisible. You keep living your life. You eat more or less the same foods. You move your body. You try to be reasonable. And yet, over time, something feels off. At first, it's small things. You notice that you don't feel as light after meals. You wake up a little more tired than you used to. Your appetite feels less predictable. Some days you're not that hungry. And other days it feels like you could eat all day and never feel satisfied. You don't panic. You tell yourself it's normal. Everyone goes through phases like this. Then you start noticing patterns. Foods that never bothered you before suddenly feel heavier. Skipping meals feels harder. Stress affects you more. Sleep doesn't feel as restorative. And fat loss, which used to respond quickly to small changes, now feels stubborn. Almost defensive. This is usually the moment when people start blaming themselves. They assume they're doing something wrong. Maybe they need more discipline. Maybe they need a better plan. Maybe they're just not trying hard enough. And so they tighten control. They eat less. They track more. They cut things out. They push harder in workouts. They add rules. At first, that effort feels productive. There's a sense of control. A feeling of doing something. The scale might even move for a bit. But underneath, something else is happening. Food starts to feel stressful. Eating feels like a test you could fail. Hunger feels like an enemy. And relaxing feels dangerous, because relaxing means losing progress. Over time, this creates a quiet tension that follows you throughout the day. You think about food more, not less. You think about your body more, not less. And even when you're on track, there's a low-level anxiety in the background. What if this stops working? What if I mess up? What if this is as good as it gets? That's when people start saying things like, my metabolism is broken, or my body just doesn't respond anymore. And that belief is powerful, because once you believe your body is the problem, every struggle feels permanent. But here's the part that almost no one explains in a way that actually makes sense. Your body is not responding to calories in isolation. It's responding to context. It's responding to timing. It's responding to patterns that repeat day after day. Your metabolism is not a simple on-off switch. It's a system that adapts to what it experiences most often. When your days feel rushed, unpredictable, and stressful, your body adapts by becoming cautious. It holds onto energy. It increases appetite signals. It reduces spontaneous movement. Not because it's trying to sabotage you, but because its job is to protect you. And from its perspective, unpredictability equals risk. This is why fat loss feels easier during calm periods of life. Vacations, time off, less pressure, more sleep. Even when people eat more, their bodies often respond better. It's not magic. It's safety. When the body feels safe, it becomes generous. When it feels threatened, it becomes conservative. The mistake most people make is trying to solve this by adding more intensity, more restriction, more effort. But intensity amplifies stress. And stress reinforces the exact signal that tells the body to hold on to fat. So the harder you push, the more resistance you feel. And the more resistance you feel, the harder you push. It becomes a loop. Eventually, fatigue sets in. Not just physical fatigue, but mental fatigue, decision fatigue, motivation fatigue. You start wondering if this is just how things are now, if this is the new normal. And that quiet resignation is often what stops progress, more than anything else. But here's the truth that changes everything. Your body hasn't forgotten how to burn fat. That ability doesn't disappear with age. It doesn't shut off permanently. It simply becomes less willing to do it under chaotic conditions. Fat loss is not about forcing the body. It's about convincing it. Convincing it that food is available, that energy is stable, that there is no emergency, that there is no reason to hoard resources. When those messages are consistent, the body relaxes. And when the body relaxes, everything works better. Hunger becomes quieter. Cravings lose urgency. Energy becomes more even throughout the day. Fat loss stops feeling like something you have to wrestle into submission and starts feeling like something that happens naturally when the environment is right. This is why resets work when willpower fails. A reset isn't about doing extreme things. It's not about punishment or deprivation. It's about removing noise, simplifying decisions, creating short-term predictability. It's a way to interrupt the stress signals long enough for your body to recalibrate. 7 days is powerful not because it's long, but because it's contained. It feels doable. It doesn't feel like a life sentence. And yet, it's long enough to change how your body interprets your environment. Within that window, appetite regulation improves. Sleep often deepens. Energy steadies. And once that shift happens, fat loss feels easier, even without trying harder. This is the foundation. Before diets, before rules, before plans, fat loss becomes easier when the body feels safe enough to let go. And that's exactly what this reset is designed to create. Not control, not force, but permission. Once your body starts to relax, something interesting happens. You stop fighting yourself. You stop negotiating with hunger all day. You stop feeling like every meal is a test of discipline. And instead, eating starts to feel neutral again. Not emotional. Not stressful. Just food doing what it's supposed to do. This is where most people get confused. They assume fat loss should start with restriction, with cutting, with doing less. But in reality, the body often needs the opposite signal first. It needs reassurance. It needs consistency. It needs proof that energy is coming in regularly and predictably. When that proof is missing, the body stays on edge. It keeps appetite high. It keeps fat storage active. It keeps energy usage conservative. That's not failure. That's biology doing its job. A reset works because it shifts focus away from control and toward rhythm. Rhythm tells the body what to expect. And when the body knows what to expect, it stops overreacting. Think about how unpredictable most days are. Meals happen whenever there's time. Sometimes early, sometimes late. Sleep shifts from night to night. Stress spikes unexpectedly. Snacks appear randomly. Caffeine fills the gaps. From the body's perspective, this is chaos. Not dramatic chaos, but enough to create uncertainty. During a reset, the goal is not perfection. It's repetition. Eating at roughly the same times. Waking up at roughly the same time. Creating anchors throughout the day. These anchors tell your nervous system that the environment is stable. And stability changes how energy is managed. One of the first things people notice during a proper reset is that hunger changes shape. Instead of constant grazing or sudden intense cravings, hunger becomes clearer, more specific. It shows up when it makes sense, and then it leaves. That alone reduces mental fatigue. When you're not thinking about food all day, everything feels easier. Decision-making improves. Mood stabilizes. Energy stops crashing mid-afternoon. These changes are not dramatic, but they are noticeable. And once you feel them, it becomes hard to ignore how chaotic things felt before. Another shift happens in the background. When stress hormones calm down, your body becomes more willing to release stored energy. Fat loss doesn't feel urgent anymore, and paradoxically, that's when it starts happening more consistently. This is why forcing fat loss rarely works long-term. Force creates tension. Tension creates resistance. Resistance keeps the body in defense mode. And defense mode is not compatible with letting go of stored fuel. A reset interrupts that loop. It tells your body, we are not in a rush. We are not in danger. We are not reacting. We are settling. And that message, repeated over several days, carries more weight than any single meal or workout ever could. People often ask how long it takes to feel a difference. The answer is usually sooner than expected. Sometimes within a few days. Not because fat magically disappears, but because the body starts behaving differently. Appetite softens. Energy becomes smoother. Sleep improves. And once those pieces fall into place, fat loss becomes a downstream effect. This is also why the scale is not the best early indicator. The most important changes happen before visible fat loss. They happen in how you feel around food, how reactive you are, how much mental space eating takes up. When those improve, the rest usually follows. The mistake many people make is stopping too early. They feel a bit better and immediately go back to old patterns. Irregular meals, late nights, high stress, and the body responds exactly as it did before. Not because it's stubborn, but because it's consistent. A reset works when it's allowed to complete its message. When the body gets enough repetition to trust the new pattern. That trust doesn't require months. It requires clarity. And clarity comes from simplicity. You don't need to optimize everything. You don't need perfect food choices. You don't need extreme discipline. You need predictability. That's it. Predictability lowers stress. Lower stress improves metabolic flexibility. And metabolic flexibility makes fat loss easier. This is why the most effective changes often feel almost boring. They're not dramatic. They're not flashy. But they work because they align with how the body actually functions. When the body feels supported instead of pressured, it stops clinging. And when it stops clinging, fat loss becomes something that unfolds naturally, instead of something you chase endlessly. By the time you reach the later part of a reset, something subtle but powerful starts to happen. You stop reacting so much. Food loses its emotional charge. Hunger no longer feels like an emergency. It feels like information. And when hunger becomes information instead of a threat, your relationship with eating changes completely. This is where most people realize the problem was never willpower. It was noise. Too many signals hitting the body at the same time. Too much unpredictability. Too much pressure layered on top of an already stressed system. When that noise quiets down, clarity returns. You begin to notice how your body actually responds. Which foods leave you energized? Which meals keep you satisfied? Which habits support you and which ones drain you? These observations don't come from tracking apps or rigid plans. They come from awareness. And awareness only shows up when the nervous system is calm enough to notice. This is why the later days of a reset feel different from the beginning. The beginning is about slowing things down, removing friction, creating stability. The later days are about momentum. The body starts cooperating instead of resisting. Fat loss no longer feels like something you're chasing. It feels like something that's quietly happening in the background. People often describe this phase as feeling lighter, even before any significant weight loss occurs. Not lighter physically, but mentally. There's less urgency, less pressure, less internal negotiation. And that mental lightness matters more than most people realize. Because fat loss is not just physical. It's behavioral. It's emotional. It's neurological. When your brain stops perceiving food as scarce or dangerous, it stops driving compulsive behavior. And when compulsive behavior fades, consistency becomes easy. This is where many people make a critical mistake. They assume the reset itself is the solution. But the reset is not the goal. The reset is the doorway. It shows you what your body feels like when it's not constantly on guard. And once you experience that, you don't want to go back. The real value of a reset is that it recalibrates your internal baseline. Afterward, you can feel when things drift. You notice sooner when stress builds, when sleep slips, when meals become chaotic again. And because you notice sooner, you can correct earlier. That's what prevents cycles of weight regain. Fat loss becomes sustainable when you stop relying on motivation and start relying on awareness. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Awareness, once built, stays with you. It guides decisions quietly, without force. This is also where speed becomes important in a different way. Not speed of weight loss, but speed of correction. When you can reset quickly, even a few days of chaos don't spiral into months of frustration. You know how to bring your system back into balance. And that skill is incredibly powerful. A 7-day reset teaches your body how to return to safety. It reminds your nervous system what stability feels like. And once that memory is reactivated, it's much easier to access again. This is why fat loss feels easier after a proper reset. Not because you found a secret trick, but because you removed the constant friction that made everything harder. When friction disappears, effort goes further. Results feel smoother. And progress feels natural instead of forced. At that point, fat loss stops being the main focus. It becomes a side effect of living in a way that your body understands and trusts. And when your body trusts you, it stops fighting back. That's the shift most people are missing. Not more discipline, not stricter rules, but a calmer system, a predictable rhythm, a sense of internal safety. Once that's in place, fat loss no longer feels like a war. It feels like cooperation. And cooperation always wins in the long run.